But let's just for example's sake, let's say like you have a similar situation, but the other two dogs have never had training, and this person, like your client, is trying so hard to get these two under control, and and you got two dogs on a different level than these other dogs. How do you kind of work with that with somebody like a dog owner?
I think that there needs to be some extent of training with all dogs, but the training doesn't need to be all dogs need to be fully on and off leash obedience trained. I think that helps because you can manage things a little bit better when they have full on and off leash obedience training. But if you really look at like where do fights come from, it comes from two things, right? It comes from no control over resources, which is food, toys, and affection. We talk about that all the time, right? There's no good routines for the food. There's no good routines for the toys. There's no routines over the affection. And remind me, I'm going to talk in a second here about resource guarding. Okay. Because that pertains to those things, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that creates issues in households with dogs is behavioral issues outside of obedience commands that are going unchecked. So basically, some of your dogs or one of your dogs is seeing the other dogs rehearse behavioral issues that we should be disciplining. So that dog is disciplining the dog. And it's not like they're like, oh God, mom's doing a bad job with training right now, so I got to step in and train this dog, right? Yeah. It's not that. But a lot of these high arousal behavioral issues you'll see in the house, like most of it is like the reactivity, like reacting out the window, reacting when people come over the house, reacting at the fence line, those types of things. That energy is like a magnet for other dogs where they want to control it, right? It's like this desperate like urge that they have that's like involuntary to go over and control that energy. So if we're not controlling it, the other dogs are ultimately going to want to control it because it's instinctual, right? So because of that, like let's say the other two dogs had zero training. At a bare minimum, I would be getting those dogs e-collars so we could start getting on some of the individual behavioral issues they have, which is fine and that could work. The reason why it's less than ideal is because what obedience training does is it helps get the baseline level of arousal down to a more manageable level. So when we go to correct for those behavioral issues, it's a little bit easier to correct for them, right? Yeah. And it depends on the severity of the situation, you know? Like if it's not really that big of a deal, the dogs are not really that poorly behaved, stuff like that. Usually you can get away with less training than if it's a bigger, like this situation, how it's 4 power breed dogs, with big behavioral issues. And their instinct to try to control things is going to be much stronger because of how much dominance they kind of inherently hold with each other. Yeah. So, cool.